Welcome to Inform Kenya. This is a Nairobi Baptist Church initiative, a series of videos on civic education to help our congregation and others beyond to understand better what our responsibility is to our country. As we continue in our discussions on this responsibility to our nation, we are pleased to have with us our second guest at Inform Kenya, and he is currently the lead pastor at Nairobi Baptist Church, Kikuyu, and was formerly the lead coordinator for the Kibera initiative. Reverend Evans Mutamba, karibu sana.
Asante sana.
And please tell us a bit about this Kibera Peace Initiative. What was it about, and who are the key people involved?
Thanks so much, Reverend Pinto. Peace Initiative, it was initiated by Nairobi Baptist Church in the year 2016, as we were waiting to get into 2017 elections. As we are all aware, it is said that the headquarters of Nairobi are in Kibera, and and the headquarters of Kibera is the Kamkunji. Yeah. So we failed Kibera. When Kibera gets on fire, none is spared, because Kibera supplies personnel throughout this city of Nairobi. And so we thought if we will be able to help people to understand and appreciate the value of peace, then it will be easier to manage the elections without chaos or violence.
Okay.
So it was initiated by Nairobi Baptist Church, targeting mainly Kibera, but with time spread into all informal settlements within Nairobi.
Okay. Yeah. Who are the key people involved in this initiative? Primarily, it was the church, pastors who serve in informal settlement areas, but also we brought on board the Muslim sheikhs, like Sheikh Yusuf, the main leader at Makina Mosque, who was by then also the vice chairman of SUPKEM, Kenya. Okay.
So Muslims are also brought on board. We brought politicians on board and community leaders, especially young people in Kibera. They were highly involved.
Okay. Yeah. Who are the target for this initiative? Did you have a target group of people, or was it just broad and one size fits all?
Now, we had a target. The church is very spread in Kibera, and primarily in all informal settlements. By 2016, we had over 3,000 congregations of churches in Kibera.
3,000?
3,000.
Wow.
And so we felt if we target churches, at least a big percentage of people go to church. And if these people will be peaceful, then most likely peace will prevail. That was the first group. The second group we target were the community leaders, the Nyumba Kumi leaders, the village elders, and chief. And so we were able to meet with them and take them through the Peace Initiative program that we are having. And thirdly, we had the youth, primarily youth leaders around Makina and Olympic area, especially Olympic stage. That's a headquarter of Kibera. If you miss to get those guys, you haven't got anything.
Okay.
So we brought them on board.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it successful? If yes, in what ways? If it wasn't successful, why not?
In my honest opinion, it was extremely successful. Extremely successful. We all know how high stakes were in 2017. And I remember through the support of the Baptist Church, we took to Rwanda a group of around 50 community leaders, pastors, Muslim leaders, and youth. And so when we came back, by the fact that they saw what had happened in Rwanda, those skulls, as much as they are not called skulls in Rwanda, they are called people. They saw dead people in Rwanda. They didn't want that thing to happen in Kenya. And so when we came, people are very aggressive to talk about peace, not to be, to oppose each other through fighting, but through voting and going home. Yes, there were a few violence cases here and there, but it was largely peaceful. The only place that there was some little violence, it was around Olympic and the lower sides of 42. It's something bigger that I don't want to talk about at this particular time, but it was extremely peaceful. Kayole, which had been seen to be the red zone, even by the government, it was peaceful. Coming to Korokosho, it was peaceful. Kariobanki, and all these places, we had representatives and we had trainings that took place in all those areas. So it was peaceful. Very successful.
Thank God. What about gender? Was there a gender balance in terms of those who went to Rwanda, those who were involved?
I wouldn't call it gender balance, but there was gender representation.
Okay.
Because as you know, Pastor Pinto, people highly involved in violence are basically men and young people, for that matter. And so we had majority of people were relatively young, and they were men.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is the initiative still active? If yes, what is happening on the ground? If it's not active, is there a possibility of it being revived?
Unfortunately, it is not active, though the groups are there. They keep sending messages here and there. I know one particular person, he's called Barasa. Barasa, with his personal Mika resources, really he's been coming to Kikuyu, giving reports of the pastors he's bringing together to talk about peace. And so far he has held 2 trainings in Kibera, and that's a much that I know. Whereas the others are by the civic groups that are trying to do that. One led by, I'm forgetting his name. Yes, but a few things are happening, but not as elaborate as it was in 2016, 2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there room for the local church to reignite this?
Yes, there's much room for it. Really quite a number of people, I think they associated me with the peace initiative in Kibera.
Yeah.
And so I was a representative of Nairobi Baptist. And so many times I've been called upon to whether we can start this initiative once again. Including yesterday, really one of them called me and was expressing concern. 2017, 2016, discussions were open. People are saying it could go either way.
Yeah.
There was room for discussing and helping people to look at it in a more sober way. This time round, it's like people have taken positions and they're hardly talking, which raises concern. What are they thinking about? So I think there's need, and the structures, I think, they're still in place. Just need to be ignited.
Okay. So in other words, kazi kwetu.
Yes, kazi kwetu. Yes, that's the right word.
The 2022 elections, what would you advise the voters, and especially, like you say, the majority were the young people? How would you advise them, based on the goals of the peace initiative, how would you advise them to approach the 2022 elections?
One, elections come and elections go. Life does not begin or end with the election. And so it is important for them to know that there's life after voting. And so they shouldn't feel like if my person, because each person has his person, if my person doesn't go through, then my life ends. No, life goes way beyond. Number two, the person that you live with is probably much more important than the person that you're really striving to vote for and the person you want to fight for. So value a neighbor, value the people that you live with, because you need them, even after tomorrow.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that one, there's a need for the initiative to be reignited. And then you mentioned that the structures, the people are still available. Yeah. Have the faces changed? Are we going to be dealing with the same people, or do we have to take yet another group to visit Rwanda?
You see, the youth leadership in Kibera is very dynamic, keeps changing. And so, because I haven't been on the ground for, call it almost 4 years, it's most likely that a number of the leadership, especially around Olympic, could have changed. Because the leadership at Olympic is central. You get them on board and you are sorted. You ignore them and you ignore them to your own peril. So most likely that one has changed, something someone needs to find out. Yeah. Also, of course, Nyumba Kumi leaders, they also change, I think. Some, because again, Kibera and slum areas are very dynamic. People move in and people move out. So most likely some people have moved out. So we may bring old and new together, kind of mix.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in other words, we're looking at a situation where there will be some new faces.
Definitely.
But there'll also be some who were there previously.
Yes.
With the older group, do you feel that there's enough of history to continue with this without having to, inspire afresh, the fear of getting into a violent situation? Because it sounds like what you mentioned with the trip to Rwanda, that was a turning point. The new leadership amongst the youth, will there be a need for that, or will it be adequate for those who are there previously to tell them this is what we witnessed?
I think it is the older people who are there, by the fact that they visited Rwanda and they saw what happened, they carry the memories with them. That's an area that they will want to avoid as much as possible. And because quite a number of them are still around, it is sufficient to, there will be enough influencers to the new people as we bring them on board, if we bring them on board.
Okay. Yeah. Now, typically, we have, we tend to have people who, that is so-and-so's responsibility, it's not mine. And there's a possibility that the group that comes together for this initiative for 2022, there are those who can say, it is their responsibility, and so they sit back and wait for that team to do all the work. How would you encourage the local communities? You have your different settlements, you have your different estates, you have the local pastors, you have the local Muslim leaders. How would you encourage them to get involved, even if they are not at the organizational level of this initiative?
I think these people, first they have a heart. They'll want to, because they have called. made a number of calls. So it is basically being guided that if we're going to cover much, then this is the approach we're going to use. Because I know at least 5 congregations in Kibera that are using the manuals that we gave out in 2016, 2017 to preach for preaching series, and it was about the healing wounds of ethnic violence. And so I think people are willing, they just need to be given guidance. I think Nairobi Baptist stands a very high chance. For many churches in Kibera listen to Nairobi Baptist. So if Nairobi Baptist Church showed them the way how we need to go, but at the end of this year, I think also just preparing them so that Nairobi Baptist Church doesn't have to be coming back every electioneering year to help them steer the community away from violence. So it is an initiative that we need to reignite, but not stop after election, so that we are preparing them and helping them to understand that it is their responsibility. Nairobi Baptist will not keep on going back to help them deal with this question of peace or violence during times of election.
Okay. You had mentioned earlier about the successes and so on. Were there any areas where people did not want to be involved?
Not any that I know of. Because basically, people in slum areas, call it Kibera, Kayole, Mkuru kwa Njenga, Korokocho, Kariobangi, Mathare, all those areas were highly represented, and pastors came at will anytime we called them. And anytime we sent a team for training there, they were so willing. The other organization, like NCCK, they were so much willing, and they sent resources to come. Nairobi Chapel, to a limited extent, also was highly was involved. CITAM was involved to an extent. So many people are willing, and I remember even when there were few chaos and violence in Kibera, again, when we call on our leaders, and I remember one of the persons that I called upon, because I was told some people had been shot, and they were having gun wounds as they were going to hospital. And I called Dr. Makanda, and the situation was arrested. I remember also there's a night I was waking up, I was told that people were being shot. I called current Bishop Callisto. It was past midnight, and he called the people in the high offices, and the fighting and the shooting and the killing stopped in around 42. So yes, many people are willing. There's no one we call upon and did not respond positively.
Okay. Yeah. Now, the local leadership has changed. You are no longer in Kibera. There are probably other pastors who are not there. The leadership of the local mosques may have changed. The politicians definitely have changed.
Yes.
Do you think it will be an uphill task, or is it doable?
One, mosque, because like Sheikh Yusuf, I know he's still on the ground, and he was working with around 6 other sheikhs that we served with. I know quite a number of pastors are still there. There are few people that have changed. It's me, because I left. Yeah. The other person who was equally very supportive as much as he was a politician, the late Ken, the MP for Kibera, was highly involved. He's not. But Imran, he was his CDF manager. He was involved, and his team, their team, CDF team, was highly involved. the Nyumba Kumi, the chief, they know us, and if they have changed, there are not many.
Okay.
I think it's in a significant figure that I belong to, but majority are still in Kibera and all those slums that I've mentioned.
You're probably aware that many Christians don't think they should be involved in politics. They think this is a dirty business. They don't want to get their, their souls tainted.
Yes.
What are you doing as a pastor and a group of pastors? What are you doing involved in such political things?
Politics is extremely critical. It has to do with the management of the affairs of the city. And when the city is affected, all of us are affected. Whether saints or sinners are all affected. But we also reminded that we are the salt and the light of the world. If politics is dirty, then it requires the light. If it is dirty, then it requires the salt to preserve and to light so that there's change. And that informs our way of engaging. That we can bring sanity because this thing matters, it's going to affect all of us. We cannot just leave it in the hands of few, but the church needs to be involved. And that's why we were involved, and I strongly believe that's why we still need to be involved.
Amen. As your parting shot then, can you speak to the Christian out there who thinks that this is none of my business, I don't want to get soiled by politics? As your parting shot, what would you say to them?
Politics is central to the development of any nation. And as long as we're here, we're going to be affected in one way or the other. It is the responsibility of the church, the saints, the believers, to be involved and bring the positive influence into the world of politics. You may not necessarily be a politician who is vying for a political seat, but you are a voter. So you need to get out there and vote. You know the kind of person that can be a good leader. Speak out for those people that are good, people who stand for values. We don't have to keep quiet when we know that we have a voice, we have an influence. And above all, let's remember that after election, all of us need to be together and move forward as a country and as a nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Mutamba, for your time and for your counsel. And I pray that the initiative will kick off again this year and be an even greater success than it was the first time.
Asante sana Reverend Pinto, I appreciate this.
Karibu sana. This has been our second edition of Inform Kenya, and we thank you for joining us. The scriptures remind us in Matthew 5 that blessed are those who are called to bring peace because they are children of God. And so this is our responsibility before God and to this nation of Kenya. And so we welcome you to continue to join us as we continue in this series of Inform Kenya. And call a friend, call a family member, and just encourage them to be part of this. Be blessed and stand up for your country.